existence. He cannot be self-creating. He doesn't have any kind of compelling element that has to be there. Therefore, the world demands that be a creator. Except that the presence of the world is so overpowering and is so focusing our attention to the cheese of the world that we lose the sense that this is really a created entity. So in order as to not to lose that sense, which is a fundamental truth, this is what we're talking about. To have the whole approach to our world to begin with to be a creation, rather than a presence which we explain where it's coming from. Is that?
Yes. No, this you brought out yesterday. I mean, in several of the past days, you've been stressing this. No, it's.
The question is, how come I don't see you? You see me. I see you, but you don't see me, right?
No, I do not. I hear you.
Be there someplace.
I hear you well, but I don't see you.
You hear me well, right?
There is a logo in the bottom of your screen that says mute, so you should hit.
Alluded to that which was explained before, which we will fill in briefly. The whole that all of this is referring to the union, the effect of the makif, that ultimately the fact that there is a makif for the neshamas. This is why in the neshamas there is this draw to Elokus, all the way to the point of Abba b'chol me'edcha. Abba b'chol me'edcha is the pinnacle of Abba, where the Abba is not identifiable from any functional source like Seichel and Midas. It's an Abba b'chol me'edcha with your entire being, which means that all that you are identifying with, all that you're relating to is even your own mitzias is Elokus. As you already pointed out, the Abba B'chol Me'edcha reverses the entire process of human thought. Instead of recognizing world and then explaining where the world is coming from, Abba B'chol Me'edcha starts off from recognizing the divine truth. How does a human being start off by recognizing the divine truth? He's in the world. And the answer is, his neshama is a divine presence, even though it is in the world. Its sense of reality is the divine presence. This is why there is Abba B'chol Me'edcha. B'chol Me'edcha means your entire being. In other words, Elokus, that godliness is that which begins the human conscience, rather than that to which one reaches. What makes me see reality is in Infolikus. That's Abba. All right, so this is the Abba B'Chomeitcha. This Abba B'Chomeitcha is the effect of the makif. In other words, if we should be aware of our way of mitzias, by the process of seichel and midas, we would see the world first. Just as, practically speaking, the first thing you identify in the world is the touch. Something is there, something interferes, something affects me. This is how things work in the world. Abba B'Chomeitcha bypasses that process, that level completely. And the process, the means by which it enables a person to bypass this process and go straight to the divine truth. Is the effect of the makif or makif, where one is recognizing that the reality is not what I observe with my seichel and midas, so with my eyes or hands, but the reality is that which is presented to me from above. And this presented to me from above, this is the makif. In other words, the overall reality, the overall truth. In makif, there are, generally speaking, as the Rebbe already introduced to us, there are two madrigas. The lower madriga is called makif the ak, makif of Odom Kadmei, on the level of Odom Kadmei. What is the implication of the name Odom Kadmei? It's a makif that introduces, that presents, and tells you that there is the divine concept of what Odom is, Odom Kadmei. In other words, human being is not something that comes to being when it's in the world. The human being has been conceived in the divine level. But there it is in the makif level, the makif mama. And this makif is what presents to the human being the sense of divine reality. All the way to the point where it affects him, Abba B'Chomeitcha. This makif is not something which lends itself to be understood and grasped by human seichel. It remains something above the human seichel. It's called makif. And as we already said, in the level of makif itself, which is not be grasped by seichel, there are different madrigas. The lower madriga is called makif the Odom Kadmei, the makif of the pristine man, meaning the origin of the human reality. This makif is really a makif, which means it is above being grasped by the world. But still, it mikomokoim, even still, meaning even though it's a makif, above world, yesh li shaychus al ho'ilomis. It has a relationship to world. This is what we attempting to get into. We hopefully will try to focus into these words. Mekomokim is l'shaychus el ho'ilomis. Mekomokim means, despite the fact that it's only a makif, it's above world, above the tangible level. And yet it has a shaychus to world. And this is where the Mikol Mokum comes from. Because in the world, everything in world, it would seem that things begin from the tangible level. How do I know things in the world? By coming in contact with them. Whether it is by touch, by sight, by sound, but some kind of interaction. This is how you get to know things in the world. Makif, which does not have any of these expressions of sight, touch, or sound, is so to speak, is unknown to the world. Yet still be saying that no, the world is aware of the makif. How is the world aware to the makif if it does not have worldly qualities? This is what we explained. That this makif effectuates in the world a sense that yes, you're in the world, but you sense that there is something higher than world. And this sense that there is something higher than world is so real that it engenders in you a draw, an ahava, a quest that you want to come close to it. You want to identify with it. This is the meaning that the makif has an effect to the point of effectuating an ahava, a draw. And the Rebbe says, and that's what we discuss just now, how does a makif bring out in the world a sense of reality to the point that you are drawn to it? This makif, the effect, the means by which the makif affects the world, the neshama, to the point that the neshama becomes and drawn to it, so that it has a kind of a sense of reality. Is that it is makif, but this makif says that yes, this is above world, but there is world therein. There's cognizance of mitzias of world. I want to illuminate your world, so to speak. I want to elevate you. If you say, I want to elevate you, it means that you recognize already my mitzvahs. This is what's called Makiv, the Odom Kadmon. Makiv, that the Rebbe says, Yeshli Shaychus El Ho'ilomis. It's a Makiv that recognizes, it can relate to world. Again, what is the meaning of the words Yeshli Shaychus El Ho'ilomis? Oilomes, by definition, means something that has been newly created. It doesn't have a presence other for the fact that it was created. It is not a fundamental presence. It's not a presence because it has to be. It comes into being because it's created. That's world. Makiv the Akar. Makiv normally is that which is a primary presence, not the created. But there are different materialism and Makiv. There is a Makiv, the Ak, that does have a sense of worldly reality. Yes, indeed, this is Makiv. But even though it's Makiv, it's higher than being a tangible presence. It allows for a tangible presence to be identified from within it. It is Shaychus El Ho'ilomis. Just 1 second. That this Makiv, even though this is a Makiv, it is not at a tangible level. Why do we say that it has a shaychus to world?
Excuse me, could you recenter the picture?
The Rebbe says it has a shaychus to world. Even though it's a makif. And the word makif means it's encompassing. Encompassment means that it relates directly to the source, or to Elokus itself. Yet it has shachas to world. Why does he have a shachas to world? So as we already began discussing, in general, we could say that there are 2 levels of encompassment, makif. There's a makif, even in our experience. That's what we're going to start. There's a makif that surrounds, but it was made to surround. It was made to include and encompass. Then there is a makif that surrounds, not because it was made for that purpose, but because of its own reality. In our world, we have these 2 levels. To just make it brief and straight and quick, The sky is a makif. But the sky does not speak in terms of, I want to be makif, surround the earth. Doesn't say anything like that. It's just there, above. Then, when there's a cloud, and the cloud carries rain with it, that cloud has a much closer relationship to the earth that it surrounds. That cloud is meant to affect the earth. If you look in the Chumash, in the Torah, it says about clouds, "Anani onon al ha'oretz." Hashem says, "When I will bring a cloud over the earth." This is when the rainbow was created by Noach. "Anin onon al ha'oretz." Because the onon is meant to be al ha'oretz. The Shomayim is not meant to be on the Oretz. Shomayim is just a reality. It's as real as the earth itself. So here is something alluding to this type of, to those two levels of makif. A makif that is a makif, it surrounds, but it does not, by definition, relate to world. It's not makif world. It is just above. Then there's a makif whose function is to relate to world and to encompass the world. And this is what the Rebbe is saying. We spoke so far in the Ruchnish Kibbutz, the makif or Adam Kadmain. The makif or Adam Kadmain that has the effect in the world of bringing the AYIN, the neshama, Abba b'chol me'idcha. So even though it's a makif, it's a makif that identifies with world. As its world, it brings an ahava to holocaust. It shows world a locution to the extent that the world can appreciate and identify with it. That's why it has an ahava. If it were completely a world, then even though it's present, the world would not be aware of its presence. Again, and Misholi comes up, we're immediately aware of it. The sky itself, we hardly ever pay attention to it. Although the sky is a great makif over the world. Because the sky has no shaykhs to earth, to world. Whereas the cloud does have a shaykhs to world. Thus, we have identified these two makif, where one makif has an effect on the world, the other makif it could be oblivious, it could be unaware in the world. This is what Rebbe says. Makib the Ak. The level of Makib the Ak is the Shachas of Lois. Hagam Shu B'Bchinas Makib HaRochik. Even though it is at the level of, it is a quality of Makib, which is distant from world, Rochik. Nonetheless, it has a relationship to world. It identifies that there is a world someplace down there. Ve'alkein, and thus, because of the fact that it has a shaychus to world, nimshach mishom eze haor, from there, from this makiv of Ak, can be drawn, can come through some haor, some spark of illumination, begilui, in an cognizant, recognizable manner, in the neshomes. So that neshomes have an awareness of Elokus. Let us discuss this for a moment. Awareness of Elokus is not an awareness that you can stay in your mitzias in the world and be aware of Elokus. Awareness of Elokus means that you are completely transformed to a different sense of reality. Instead of thinking that the mitzias of the world, this is reality, you are aware of Elokus, you see that there is a much higher reality that enables all that. Elokus completely negates the mitzias of world in terms of being a mitzias for itself. So when there is a gilui when there is the effect of the makiv or makiv, the gilui in the neshomis, that opens up the neshama, elevates the neshama, shows the neshomis a complete different reality. It shows the neshomis a divine reality, replacing the worldly reality. Again, very briefly, worldly reality means something that I encounter. A divine reality means the fundamental reality itself, where everything is coming from. And the Shomes, even though they are creations in the world, are capable of relating to this awareness. It has a very profound effect where you're not world-oriented, but you see that there is something which is super worldly, but you're able to tolerate it, you're able to relate to it. Neshomis, because they have the ability of beetle, are able to relate to it. Tato. It's called Makiv the Yak. The Makiv that gives you a sense of Elokus within your worldly reality. Now we continue on at the end of the second line. Abba, however, but Bechinas Tehiru Ilo, the Bechina, that sense, what's called Tehiru Ilo, the higher purity, a purity, divine purity that is not recognized in worldly terms at all. Shazehu Bechinas, which is the aspect of Hayigol HaGodl, the great encirclement. Shazehu Lifnei HaKav, the great encirclement that precedes, that is before the Kav. What is this about? Yigol HaGadol HaGodl Shelifnei HaKav. Kav means a line. What is the implication of a line? The implication of a line is that he's presenting many points, many principles in a linear form. Linear form means one behind the other. Not all encompassed as one reality, but presented it in a manner that you can identify each level on its own. So that counts. In world, the Kav is the only means by which you can talk to world. Just as in our own interaction. When we speak of an idea, in one sentence, in one word, have to present it in a certain orderly and start to finish process. And if it's presented in disorganized manner, we lose it. It's not a cup. To come to world, in world has to be presented in a cup. In an organized, orderly fashion. So therefore, even though it presents a godly principle, it presents a godly principle in a manner that can be processed and accepted within the worldly principle, and the worldly limits. This is called Makiv De'ak. This is the meaning, is the Shaychus El Ho'ilomis. A Makiv that presents itself in an orderly fashion. Okay, so now we'll go to the second line. Ve'al kain, and thus, because of the fact that it is a makiv to world and presents itself in a manner that is accepted to world. Thus, nimshach mishom, from this makiv can come through, can be drawn, can come the effect, eizo ha'oro, some illumination, begilui, in a recognizable manner, in the shomis. The shomis are living spirits, which means it has to be able to process what it receives. It cannot be overwhelmed. In order to process when it receives, that to receive it in an orderly fashion. First, it takes it in its chokhmah, then it comes into bina, and then it comes into midas and so forth. And
Rabbi Paltiel, so you went back now to talking about Makif the Ak, basically, right? You started to talk about Tira Ilah, but what you're saying now is
what? Started to about what? Tira what?
You started to talk about Tahiru Ilah at the end of it, but now you went back, you're talking now about Ak, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In order to come to Tahiru Ilah, first you have to emphasize clearly what is Torah Tator, in order to distinguish it from Tahiru Ilah. We spoke about it, but we did not speak about it in a manner of distinguishing it from something else. Now that we're coming to speak to Tahiru Ilah, the Rebbe himself repeats himself. So because here now you have to have a clear identity of what we mean by Tira Tator. That he has a shaykhus to world. And because he has a shaykhus to world, this is why it can be accepted and recognized in the Neshamis. Neshamis, as we said, take things in a very orderly fashion, starting from Chokhmah and then and down. And in order for that to occur, the earth has to be presented to them in this orderly fashion. That is possible, even though everything comes from Makiv, Odom Kadmi, from higher than world, but it is possible only because it is called Tira Tator. Tira Tator means even though it's a Makiv, it recognizes the phenomenon of world and the limits of world. What entices people to learn about these kind of things? But who can ask questions about neshamis? People want to understand, want to know these things which are completely out of this world. Oh, okay, now we are towards the end of the second line. There's a ha'ora begilui in the neshamis of a quality which is called makif. And it is begilui in the neshamis. Neshamis relate to it. Hiru Yilo, but the Bechina, or what's called the Hiru Yilo, the upper purity, which means the upper level of Makif. What is the upper level of Makif? Shezeo Bechina Zoyigol Hagodl, which is the Bechina, the aspect of Yigol Hagodl, the great encirclement. The great encirclement means the encirclement as it comes from above the Tzimtzum. Shelifnei HaKav, that is preceding the Kav. The Kav is a divine revelation coming into world. That's what it's called a Kav, a line. A line means it comes in a controlled manner. Yigul HaGodol Shlifnei HaKal is not presenting itself to the world. Rather, you see the way things are at their source. In the divine level itself. Lifnei HaKal. Hagam shezehu gam ken b'bchinas makiv le'elomis. Although that this eagle hagodol shlifnei hakal also qualifies, also has an element that it is a makiv le'elomis. It recognizes, it also gives cognizance to world. And it also recognizes encompassing world. And then furthermore, acharat tzimtzum, which is already after the tzimtzum. What is the principle acharat tzimtzum? Acharat tzimtzum means the tzimtzum is for the purpose of allowing for the existence, the coming forth of world. That's a tzimtzum. Prior to the tzimtzum, world has no cognizance. After the tzimtzum is also a divine truth. But after the tzimtzum means that there was something done to allow for world cognizance, for world presence, recognizing the world. The world also of marking the world. And it is also after the tzimtzum. The principle after the tzimtzum means that there was something done to prepare for world, to allow world to surface. Even though there was something done to allow worlds to surface, it is still before the cup, which means nothing was drawn in worldly fashion, in an orderly fashion of a cup. That tzimtzum that will allow to draw a cup, even though it itself is a makif. So what is the effect of the fact that there was a tzimtzum? Since it remains a makif, the effect of the fact that it was a tzimtzum is really a statement. And let me see what this statement is. The principal statement is that I'm expressing something. And this is the difference between before the tzimtzum and after the tzimtzum. After the tzimtzum, before the tzimtzum, nothing is being expressed. It is the reality, the divine reality, the way it is. Achara tzimtzum, it's expressing a divine reality, but it's expressing it. The part that it can be expressing it is giving cognizance to a world, to a place where this is not known. This is what the Rebbe is saying. Eagle HaGodel Lifnei HaKav. It is still above world. But it is Makiv Leilomis Achar HaTzimtzum. What's the meaning of Achar HaTzimtzum? That world is already being given a cognizance. Something is being done in order to identify world. The important of it is that the concept of world is already surfacing. This concept of world at this point is a concept of world as it is known from above world. It's not world therein. It is knowing world from above world. Ein lo zeh shaychus on the fourth line. Ein lo zeh shaychus al ha'ilomis. This madrege, Eagle HaGodel, has no shaychus to world. This is how world is known higher than world. Not how world is identifiable in the worldly process, but how world is known from a level which is above world. This Eagle HaGodel Shenifnei HaKav is not an eagle that was formed in order to allow for world. This is the eagle as it is from the source itself, how it is in the divine reality itself. Even though that too surfaces after the tzimtzum, but what is it that surfaces after the tzimtzum? That which is above world. Ein lo zeh shaychus al ha'ilomis. Even though it surfaces after the tzimtzum, it has no relationship to world. It has no worldly quality. It is the world as it is known from the divine perspective. Therefore, therefore from this cannot come any kind of ha'ora, any kind of spark of illumination, a divine illumination. Begil means something that can be absorbed and understood in the world, because it is a non-worldly reality. It's a divine reality. Worldly reality. Worldly reality means something that came into being. Divine reality is something that has not come into being. World cannot understand, cannot process an ha'ora from something that does not come into being.
I think it's question time.
I'm sorry?
It's question time.
Oh, okay. All right.
Was said before that Tehillah Torah would be a marshal was given to it as the clouds. Tehillah Torah was given a marshal as the clouds, which has a shaykhus lo'olamas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, then was said the sky is versus the sky. The sky has no shaykhus lo'olamas.
Right.
Would that be like a marshal for Tehillah Eloah?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, to compare it. It's not a marshal to say that the sky is like Tiril.
I understand.
Because the comparison, the
right.
sky is a reality to itself.
But because it was mentioned also, not today, but the sky gives us the ability to move around the world. This gives, if not for the sky, we will not be able to orient ourselves. So it actually does have shaykhus to elements.
The provision that the sky gives us.
Actually, Rabbi Paltiel, you didn't mention sky, you mentioned heavens.
Heavens?
I thought you did, not sky.
No, I mentioned sky. Well, whatever it is. We have to. In all these things, we have to focus in with our seichel. We cannot. We do not have words to represent it correctly. But so let's go back to the sky, to that approach that we had. We said that this is a very clear thing. A cloud, it says we finish, a cloud is something that has to do with earth. And the Pasuk says, Be'anani onon al ha'oretz. The onon is not a presence in the sky, just a presence. It is there in order to bring rain to the earth.
It's functional.
Yeah, it's a functional. The point is that it has, yes, it is functional in terms of the earth. Everything is functional in its own level. But in terms of earth, it is, a cloud is significant only because there is earth beneath it.
Uh-huh.
This is the pshat makif that has a shaykhus to world. When you go to up higher, you go to the sky itself, it's also a makif. But that makif is remote from earth. Why I cannot say the reason there's a sky is because there is an earth. Sky is a reality in itself.
Can I ask another?
Yeah, let me just finish this one sentence. The Pasuk says, Bereshis, what is the very beginning of things, of the world? Bor Elikim, Elikim created Hashamayim and all this. And the Shamayim were created even before the orders. Shamayim is not in order to provide something, but the Shamayim is Shamayim.
But it does provide for the earth.
It provides for the earth. But what does it provide for the earth? It provides for Earth a sense of something higher than Earth. It doesn't provide for Earth something that Earth can process and relate to, an earthly quality. It provides for Earth that it gives us a sense that there is something way beyond our world.
And this helps us orient ourselves in the world.
This is to stay alert in our world.
Uh-huh.
You have room for another question?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so can you explain the relationship between the Igel HaGodel, the Kav, and Ak? I'm not getting how these three concepts relate to one another, or these three levels of reality.
I'll use a very simple, down-to-earth. It's the only way to make us think of it. In our organization of life, we said many times there is the school, there's a school principal, there's a teacher. The principal is part of the school. But in order to be a principal, there has to be a school. Who creates a school? So you would think, oh, the schools, the children, they have to be educated. Who says they have to be educated? What is this whole phenomenon that there has to be this order that a child has to go to school? Let's take this a little bit further. Child goes to school and he graduates from school. And then now he's ready to act in the world on his own. In which world is he acting? In the school world or in the bigger world? Clearly he's acting in the bigger world. In other words, even though we're giving him schooling and we're teaching, but ultimately we're preparing him to function in a world that we didn't give him any definition for. In the world, in its own reality. And this is very important because when we teach a child, we We say, okay, now you go function. We don't want him to repeat what we taught him. We want him to investigate and know the world much more than what we presented to him. Find his own way. In other words, the schooling is a means to introduce him to something greater than what the school provides for. This something greater, which we never speak about, which we cannot present and define. This is called the reality of life.
This is called what?
Reality of life. This is something which is provided by the fact that Rebbe created the world. All the schooling that we do is in order to enable him to face the reality of life, not to repeat what he learned in school. To face any challenge that we completely cannot be at all predicted. This reality of life, this is also a makif. This makif is not a makif created for the processing in the world. This is the divine makif that the Creator himself says, I'm creating the world. And when we after the schooling is done, we want the child to be able to go out and relate greater reality, not that we define in school, but to the true divine reality, so that he can encounter things that we never introduce him to, and he'll be able to know how to process it, how to deal with it. Because the school introduced him, as the first step, introduced him to a truth beyond, that is beyond definition.
So I'm following your mashal, but I don't see the nimshal in the mashal. I'm asking about the Igala Gadol, the Kav, and Ak. The higher Tiru, the Kav, and the lower Tiru. And I'm still not clear from your mashal
Which is what? Which is what?
What's your mashal?
No, you're looking from the mashal, which of these things apply to the nimshal.
Well, it seems as though the greater reality for which we've been preparing the child, which he can't possibly know in advance, that this is the higher makif. This is the Igul HaGadol.
Yeah.
And the principal and the school, this is what? The Kav?
This is
Or
the
the
Tzimtzum, and then the Kav. The school is like the Kav.
Yeah, and that which the child learns in the school, this is the lower makif.
Yes.
So he learns something like a makif. What he's learning is something like a makif.
He's learning from the makif. He's being taught. Why is he being taught? Because it's something which he does not encounter on his own. He's being told anticipation of what he's going to encounter.
Eventually.
Yeah.
And the teaching itself, this is the kav.
This is the kav. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Paltiel. I'm sorry to make you work so hard.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
In the mashal of the cloud and the sky, we're saying that the cloud has a functional level, which is to bring rain to the earth, as opposed to the sky, which is a great encirclement. But isn't there inside the sky two realities, which are light and darkness?
I don't understand how that is a sky element.
I'm saying sky has two components. In day we see light, and at night it's darkness.
The light and darkness are not components of sky. They are in the sky, but the sky does not consist of these two components. I don't know how
Oh, okay.
how you think of it in terms of components.
Can I ask, in the Maimer, we learned inside that from the market, the Tehillah Torah, the lower level market, Nimshach Misham Aiza Oda Begili Benashamas. So it was explained that in order for the neshama to be able to process it, it has to go to Chachma, Bina, and so forth. Is the diak that the neshama doesn't need the koiches to process? Only if we want it, it should be begilu. If not begilu, and the neshama itself, it could get without a process. Is that true?
Yes. Begili, but if it's not begili in the neshamas, it is not really nimshach to the neshama. Let's put it very simply, okay? Again, to our marshal of the child in the school. The child has to go to school. He comes to school. Being in school does not give him anything. Does not make him a school child. Only when he goes into class and he learns something, that's a begil. So I don't know what you mean by without gili.
Without gili? Because the neshama itself, the koiches, then the chachma benet, it's a koich of the neshama. So, but in the neshama, there's higher than that.
Yes. In the neshama, there is higher than that. But that which is higher than in the neshama is not called gili. It is there because it is bottled to a lakus. The rotzen anoineg is not something that the neshama processes. It's called kehes makifi.
Right. So that the koich, even there's higher than koiches makifim too in the neshama. It's still a koich of the neshama. So there's the etzem of the neshama also. I mean,
I don't know exactly what you're trying to define, to identify.
that for the neshama itself, it's not necessary to process it, to know it, because only for the koiches of the neshama, the lower part of the neshama.
What are these koiches for? Why are the neshama got these koiches?
To be able to come down eventually in this world to the gift and to the world, because the neshama is higher than world.
So when the neshama is functioning in the world. Is the neshama then distant from what it's doing? Does it know what it's doing?
Yes.
Okay. This is not just for the koiches. This is part of the function of the neshama. This is not just for the koiches, for the activity. This is the reality of what the neshama is about. I don't think that you can separate the koiches and nefesh from the neshama. Koiches and nefesh, I'm expressing what the neshama is. When we say you understand something in your seichel, that the seichel understand without involving you, the seichel understands because you were coming through in the seichel. If not for the koiches and nefesh that are invested in the seichel wouldn't understand.
That part I understand. I'm trying to understand that the neshama is able to know things without process. The neshama itself. This
The
is what I'm
neshama
trying to
does
say.
not know things without process. So the neshama knows the divine truth, not things in the world. Things in the world, it has to go through seichel and midas.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Let's take a very simple thing. Kabedas avicha v'yashimecha. That posik in the Torah, mitzvah in the Torah. Kabedas avicha v'yashimecha. If we were not alerted to the Indian that you have to recognize your parents, your father and mother, you think it would be a natural thing to understand, to recognize the name from Kabedas avicha v'yashimecha? You were born from your mother. And the minute you were born, you turn around and say, "Oh, mommy, I want to give you covet." That makes sense. Without being brought up, without being shown how to behave in the world, in relation to your parents, you would not know the beginning of it. On the contrary, you would continue to expect your mother to take care of you and to give you everything you need.
It's always explained that the chachma is a spark of the nefesh. So it doesn't begin. It doesn't begin from chachma. Begins from the nefesh. So from that higher part of the nefesh, so now we're saying even that is also going through a process by knowing anything.
Yeah, that's what chokhmah is.
Not chachma, the higher part of chachma, where
The
chachma
higher,
comes from.
that's right. Chokhmah is the means by which you identify the higher part of the nefesh, bringing it down into conscious thought.
Right, but the higher part itself needs a process for itself, not for outside of itself, for itself.
The higher part is like this. It recognizes the higher part that there is right and wrong. But what is right and what is wrong, it doesn't know. The reason it knows right and wrong is because it knows world and Holocaust. But what is right? How do you define that which is right in your current state in the world, and how to define that which is wrong, that you have to learn.
So is the Chochmah is giving this the knowledge for the higher part, obviously.
The Chochmah is given the ability to identify, but if you don't you don't focus him, you won't know it.
That's the question.
Okay, so neshama give awareness of Elokus, and we define Tehira Tata as the neshama having bitul. And with bitul, you can relate to Elokus, to the higher reality. And then we spoke about Tehira Ilah, which is a higher reality, a higher purity that cannot be recognized in the world. You spoke about great encirclement. So how do you reconcile both?
What do you mean by reconciling?
Right? I'm saying we're saying that neshamas give you the ability to recognize the higher reality in the world, and then we're saying that the Tehira Ilah is just, it cannot be recognized into the world.
Yeah. Tehira Ilah cannot be processed and understood in the world. You can know about it, but the only way you will know about it is through recognizing that there's something higher than anything you can know. Beetle. But in a definitive manner, it's impossible.